protecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationships to the land. The City of Lethbridge is also home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3. Okay, we'll now move on to the agenda. Okay. Okay. Mr. Dalton, would you like to proceed with introduction of the options and discussion?
Just very quickly before I turn it over to Michael, Doug, and Haley, will speak to this, just to acknowledge for council and let them know that it's good news that we have another pot of funding emerge that we can take access, or we have access to, but it does also present some challenges, not just in terms of the limited timelines council has to make decisions, but also that depending on the breakdown of this pot of money, there are different levels of cost matching required, and that will have an impact on other planned infrastructure and project spends, some of which relate to decisions council's already made, like the exhibition place, but also on the future of the CIP program. So we would have loved to have had a month to work this through and be able to present this in a much cleaner, crisper way, but we are where we are to take advantage of this funding, and we'll do our best this morning to share with council how we think this will, how this opportunity, where the opportunity lies and how this may impact our fiscal situation going forward. So I'll ask Michael to start us off.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I'll begin with reviewing some of the funding sources that have been identified by the different levels of government from the feds and the province. There's been 8 different funding sources that have been identified. I'll just take you through all 8 of them right now. Infrastructure Canada, a COVID-19 resilience stream. Basically, there's $340 million that was allocated to Alberta. Recently, over the past 2 weeks, we just found out on September 15th that approximately 13.1 was allocated to Lethbridge underneath the ICIP transit stream, which the government was allowing us to move over to the resilience stream. And we'll take you through what that means and some options with that later in the presentation. The second item is the municipal stimulus program, which again, there's $500 million allocated to Alberta with $12.06 million allocated to the City of Lethbridge. This process we went through about 3 weeks ago with the Economic Recovery Committee of City Council, and again, I'll bring details of that later in the presentation. The Safe Restart program, we're still waiting to see what that looks like coming from the other levels of government. The COVID homeless response, City of Lethbridge has received funds in the form of 2 grants. One grant is $253,000 that would actually be available to an enhancement of the existing shelter, which is, the program is provincially run, and we're currently working with them about what that opportunity would look like. That is a federal grant. And the other approximately $600,000 was in support of our emergency services and rapid rehousing program when COVID first started off in our country, and the effects that we've had in our city. The FCM Canada Medical Association Foundation, we received basically $37,000. The Alberta Municipal Water Wastewater Partnership, we are not eligible because we have a population greater than 45,000. The Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program, cities again, and Lethbridge is not eligible for that program. And under the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, we did submit to Alberta Infrastructure 8 different projects that were not approved, and we're still waiting for information back of what the short gaps were in that process.
Michael, if I could just add that we did hear Friday, that late Friday, I think, that the Safe Restart allocation had come down. I think it's $11 million roughly, but we just received that.
At the most.
And that's for cost associated with COVID, as well as revenue loss and a particular stream for transportation. But we're just working through that, and we'll bring that forward shortly.
Thank you. The next slide, it's to explain the municipal stimulus program, where Lethbridge was allocated $12.06 million. The municipalities must submit their applications by October 1st. It cannot be a previously approved project. Funding has to be spent by December 31st, 2021, but it may be part of a bigger project. Part of the other obligations that we have under the MSP funding was a red tape reduction report, which was due on 2 different dates to the province, one being February 1st, 2021, and the second being February 1st, 2022. What the red tape reduction is looking for, and it can be a combination of any one of the 3, is steps to make it easier to start a new business, steps to streamline processes or shorten timelines with development and permit approvals, and third, make it more attractive, steps to make it more attractive as a destination for new investment and or tourism. Administration did report to the Economic Recovery Committee of Council. We identified 28 different potential projects that we identified against the criteria that I just previously stated. Of that, 5 came to the top, and then the Economic Recovery Committee had given direction to administration to submit applications for the following 3 projects. The airport electrical upgrade, which is the lighting and guidance systems at the airport, approximately $6.1 million. Airport runway apron taxiway improvements of $5.06 million. And Festival Square to make a permanent marketplace of $0.9 million. In a recent letter that the city received on September 15th from the provincial government describes the COVID-19 resilience stream. Eligible projects would be, and this is the criteria, is retrofits, repairs for upgrades to buildings. So things that are life cycle costing items that you might see in the buildings. Measures to support physical distancing. Transportation infrastructure, parks, pathways, bike lanes, and any disaster mitigation, such as tree replanting, and things of that nature. The COVID-19 resilience streams, the criteria is that they will allow us to stack MSI funding or other municipal funds. The spending of the project and the monies need to be done by December 31st, 2021. And they'll allow, it's an 80-20 split where it's 80% federal, 20% municipal. And it cannot be used for any projects that already have a contract signed in place. Now, the funding that was made available for the COVID-19 actually came from the public transit stream. And what the next one. And what the government is saying to us is that we can transfer monies from the public transit stream to the resilience stream. However, I'd like to just take you through what the public transit stream eligible investments criteria are. It's to improve the capacity of the public transit system overall, improve quality or safety of existing or future public transit systems, improve access, new buses or light rail systems, and anything to do with the part of the existing system that you can upgrade or replace. The split with the public transit is basically for any new projects such as buses or transit hubs would be a 40-60 split, being 40 from the federal government and 60 from the municipality. Or if you had any rehabilitation of bigger building projects, it would be a 50-50 split. The date for the project to be completed is, as in my presentation, I say 2027, 2028, but it's really the fiscal year of the province, which is March 31st, 2028. Can you bring up that one first? A similar process that we went through with the MSP money. The administration went away and brainstormed about a number of different projects and itemized a series of projects that we thought would be meet the criteria. On the spreadsheet that's in the presentation, the items that are in green, that's just a reminder of what the Economic Recovery Committee already gave direction to, which I have previously stated in the presentation. Then the next items that are highlighted with the blue on the left-hand column are items that fit the resilience stream should City Council wish to move monies from the public transit stream over to the resilience stream. And I'll just run through them. One, broadband fiber, Legacy Park Discovery Play Area, NMAX parking lot phase 1. And what phase 1 means is the west lot at the NMAX Center. Life cycle costing repairs and upgrades, and I'll just go through the list here. Labour Club ice plant replacement, Nicholas Sharon ice plant replacement, City Hall cooling tower replacement, Fritzick steam boiler replacement, and the library north wing air handling units. Others that we took into consideration with the red accent on the left-hand side were bike lanes for 4th Avenue and 7th Street, dog park, the NMAX Phase 2, or the entirety, which would include the south parking lot, waste transfer station, and the sharing rail expansion in the sharing industrial park. Next part of the presentation we're going to go through is the transit projects that are identified, and I'll turn it over to my colleague Scott to handle that.
Thank you, Michael. Just to review a number of the transit projects, when Council approved implementing Transit on Demand and CityLink, these projects that we have listed are take into consideration the transit master plan and some of the objectives that we're trying to achieve through the CityLink and Transit on Demand. These number one on our list is these CityLink terminals, which would facilitate enhancement of transit, would increase ridership, provide shelters, washrooms, ticket kiosks, and additional opportunities for revenue development through advertising, and also would complement a possible electric bus power service and other advantages. So these terminal hubs, they would be smaller in scale. Highlands Boulevard West, North Terminal East, the NMAX Center, the airport, University Drive West, ATB, Sunridge, and a possible North Terminal upgrade. With respect to some of the other projects within the timeline, many of the projects I've just outlined, we would not be able to complete by that 2021 deadline. So I've put a column in there to identify those projects which we wouldn't be able to meet those timelines. The second project that Transit identified was an electric bus project. We're expecting by 2030 that the use of diesel buses is going to be almost becoming extinct, if you will. So there's a big push to move on to electric e-bus technology. So that was the second project that we identified. That was one of the projects that we could complete by 2021. Wayfare signs, with redoing the CityLink, with those changes in mind, we would not be able to complete that by the deadline. And the last one that Transit identified was the garage floor replacement. The garage floor needs repair, so that project would be able to be completed by 2021. And yeah, those are the projects for Transit.
Now, the question that is posed to City Council is, one is the recommendation from the Economic Recovery Committee, which they had passed a resolution for, which is the MSP monies. We are ready to submit those applications for the three projects. The next question is with regard to the ICIP funding for public transit systems, which the projects that are identified would be a 40-60 split. If council would entertain or consider moving funds from the public transit over to the resilience stream in whole or in part to be able to fund a number of the projects that have been identified. Those are the two questions that we have. We have also a spreadsheet of options or combinations that City Council could entertain. There's 6 options that we've dreamt up, but it would help to get some direction from City Council if they're looking to transfer money from the public transit stream over to in whole or in part over to the resilience stream.
Thank you, Michael and Scott. My first question is the airport projects. So let's take a look at those ones, and they seem to have a green band next to them. So as a key strategy of council, what's the status of these projects?
Those projects have yet to begin. Those are the ones that were identified in the airport master plan, then re-identified in the operational overview conducted by Modalis that we reported to City Council. None of them were previously approved. They were a very good fit to the criteria of the MSP funding, and the Economic Recovery Committee gave us direction to apply for those. Those applications are waiting for further direction today just to make sure we get them in. We should hear back by the end of November if they're a go or not with the province.
And are we also applying for ACAP funding for these projects? They're operational projects, right?
We have applied for ACAP funding on both. In the event that we continue with the electrical upgrade, we would withdraw that ACAP application. With regard to the airport apron, taxiway and runway improvement, the total, we'd edit the existing application that we have in. The total project, as you see on this spreadsheet, is $9.1 million. The MSP would help out with approximately $5 million, so we could amend the existing application to $4.1 million.
And in terms of terminal improvements and post-COVID-19 readiness, is there any projects that could be submitted to improve the terminal building that could be completed before December 31st, 2021?
To answer, to be blunt, no. We did take a look at what the criteria was. The entire project on MSP monies would have to be spent, but they did not have a fit for either one of the other funding allocations that we saw here. We just didn't meet the criteria because it was already previously identified and funded in a CIP project. And the others is we wouldn't get it done in time for the entire project for December 31st, 2021.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you, gentlemen, for the presentation information as well. First of all, regarding the garage floor, is this on the new terminal?
No, the garage floor would be for the existing transit facility.
Okay, sorry, I probably misused the word new, although it's been within the last 10 years, has it not, since we built the new transit facility?
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Kaufman. The addition to the transit building was when they went through those renovations, that was for the far bay. So the garage floor replacement wouldn't be on the expansion. It would have been on the existing garage floor. So when they did the expansion, they redid the garage floor in the new, what they call the dead row area, where we put our buses that are due for repair. So that's the floor that they replaced, but they didn't replace the entire floor next to the building.
Okay, thank you for the clarification on that. That wasn't clear in the information. Just a question about the broadband fiber, how that fits into the criteria for resilience under COVID-19 resiliency stream.
We do have current broadband that is limited to in the downtown core in certain areas of the cities. This would be an enhancement or a continuation on of that existing infrastructure, and it would fit into their criteria.
But this is working towards expanding into something brand new as well. This is about creating the backbone for establishing our own utility.
Correct.
Okay, so it's moving forward as well. Thank you. Final question, the Legacy Park Discovery Play Area, was that not approved in our last capital budget in 2017, D27?
D27, approximately $1.8 million. That would allow, if City Council used this funding, to reallocate some of that funding for other projects in the CIP in the future.
Okay, it's federal gas tax fund. Just sorry, it's Chris. Just to follow up on that. Sorry, Mayor Spearman. It's just to follow up on that. It's federal gas tax funding. Did we not have a time limit on that? If we're reallocating or amending our CIP, then it's nice to know where this is going to be moved, or maybe more appropriate for this is when it's going to be moved. I don't know if the treasurer can identify that or not.
Councillor Kaufman, if the funding was moved, the available would just be reallocated to the next CIP. So anything that was unspent or unapproved or unallocated by the end of this CIP cycle would then be reallocated for next CIP consideration.
Thank you. So we can hold on to that money and just continue to carry it over?
So we get roughly an annual amount, and so at this point they haven't given us a spending deadline. No.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Spearman.
Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you all for the presentation, the information presented. Question, probably similar to Your Worship, your question around the airport terminal. I'm thinking there's a couple of big projects we've been talking about or recently approved in this that would be in the tourism stream. I'm thinking NMAX, or sorry, not NMAX, Exhibition and Performing Arts Center. Are they out of the picture because they are previously approved in our CIP? Is that why they're not being discussed?
For the MSP money, they were not eligible because they were previously approved. For
Okay.
the resilience stream, it was about retrofits, repair of existing buildings, and the expansion of infrastructure. So they didn't seem to fit the qualifications underneath the resilience stream.
Okay, thank you for that. I assumed that was the case, but I just wanted to check. Second question, Your Worship, through you probably to City Manager or Treasurer. The city's portion in this, because for almost all of this, we need to kick in some of our dollars, and it ranges. Have we looked at where our funding is? I know that MSI, I think, is allowed to stack on some of this, but others may not have MSI stacking available. Have we looked through and seen where we can fund this from, and do we have the city funding for this, or are these going to be borrowings or debts?
Councillor Carlson, so at this point in time, we've definitely been looking at it. There's lots of moving parts. And so if I look at the assumption that 100% of the resilience stream the funding is allocated 100% to the resilience stream, which is the 80-20 funding allocation, then we should be okay in terms of our matching. However, if we do not receive, that is only on the assumption that we would receive our 2021 allocation for MSI and federal gas tax. If we do not receive those allocations, then we would be short roughly $4 million under the 80-20 allocation. That number obviously increases significantly if some portion is allocated to the transit allocation, which is the 40-60 allocation. So we would need to find another funding source of roughly $4 million, and that would be a draw on our reserves or some other funding source. If we were to borrow, that would have a tax increase implication, so it would most likely take a hit to our reserves. And so there's lots of pressure and demand that's starting to build up on those reserves, just given some of the potential incentives that City Council is considering, previously funded projects that have been had an impact on our reserves. And so obviously this is a great opportunity to have some pretty significant dollars with a small contribution on the city's behalf, but it will significantly impact the future CIP in terms of funding available as we anticipate grants will be reduced and a lot of uncertainty around what the future MSI program will look like.
Thank you. Supplemental that, if I can, Your Worship. We've heard any signaling, or have we heard any signaling from the province or the feds around MSI or gas tax? I thought most of the signaling I'd heard was that they're going to continue at the same rates. Have we heard anything different?
I have not.
Okay.
I just given that I haven't kind of heard for sure yes or no. Yes, federal gas tax is an annual program from the federal government, and you know there's always the possibility that they could revise that or discontinue that. I think the risk is lower for federal gas tax. I think there is some pretty uncertain times ahead for the province, and just given the significant amount of funding that has been provided to municipalities for this year, I just wonder, I guess, is where I'm at. So I just wanted to caution that because it does create some pressure, and just wanted to ensure that council kind of had all of the information. Obviously, there's a ton of moving parts on this, and it's very tricky to kind of see where we're going to land, but just wanted to kind of give council the information at this point in time.
Okay, thank you for that, Your Worship. If I am, one last question then. What I think I'm hearing, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but this process we're sort of undertaking that's sort of enforced on us by other orders of government and COVID may take place, or may take the place, I should say, of our traditional CIP process. What I think I'm hearing is that if we go forward with this, our CIP, especially the community section, I'm sure that the infrastructure grants, et cetera, will still be there, transportation, et cetera. But this may replace our community CIP process. We'd kind of be broke, is what I think I'm hearing. Is that correct?
So we've been looking at the funding available up to the end of 2021, because that is the current CIP window that we're operating in. The Municipal Government Act requires that we do a plan, a capital plan. So even if there is, minimal dollars for Section D, we still would need to go through the process in terms of having some sort of plan. Perhaps all of the projects are pushed out, beyond the next 4-year window, but we still kind of need to demonstrate that we've done the planning process. And so if MSI and federal gas tax continue to be provided on an annual basis at the similar amounts of funding, there will be some dollars, but it's not going to be significant. And until we kind of get some more confirmation about what that might look like, I would be hesitant to say. But we will still have to go through the process, even if the dollars are fully allocated.
Thank you.
Yep. The provincial treasurer told the AUMA, not new news, but last week, that there would be a fiscal reckoning, and that would affect municipalities. So we're waiting for details. Yep. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Sorry, left my paper on the other table. Somebody just clarify for me, in terms of eligible infrastructure projects under investing in COVID-19 community resilience, it simply states retrofits, repairs, upgrades for municipal buildings. It also talks about active transportation infrastructure. Is this a fairly general description and our job is to make things fit into it, or do they have more specifics than what I'm seeing here online?
It was a very general description, and we are encouraged to make things fit.
So if we can make transit fit, if members of council remember the transit master plan, you look at sections 7, and I've got it open here, 11. I think there's aspects of 16 and 17 as well. There are short, medium, and long-term physical infrastructure things that we could actually be putting money to. So some of these funds could actually be directed to transit instead of moving things the other way, correct?
Correct. Your only limitation is the time frame of completion.
Okay, thank you. And then in terms of active transportation, I noticed there's nothing about, not necessarily parks or trails, but bridges, bike lanes, multi-use pathways. I don't see anything in any of what's been presented here, unless I missed something about any of that infrastructure. We have nothing that would meet that?
One of the items that we did take into consideration was the bike lanes, 4th Avenue and 7th Street for the downtown core. However, we could not get that completed in the timelines that were been prescribed.
Okay, but this would also then apply to possible movement to and from transit stops, because we have a number of problem ones in the community. So that's good to consider that. Final question then is, I see that the provincial government is the body that receives the application, but if it's 80-20 funding, is the province just the flow through? or is the province providing its own overlay on top of this?
Nothing will be provided by the province.
Well, I know no funding is provided by the province, so are they just collecting the applications and forwarding them? Or
Correct.
do they go through and, because it says under point 2, it says province or territory prioritizes projects and submits to Infrastructure Canada.
There'll be a level of vetting, but what it was indicated to me, it'd be limited, and they'll flow it through to the federal government.
Sorry to keep pounding this, then are we to be meeting objectives of the provincial government as well?
It was clarified to me in a phone call with the representative from the provinces that we did not have to meet the provincial priorities, which are energy, agricultural, tourism, technology, aviation, finance, and emerging opportunities. That was something that we took into consideration when we were looking at the MSP funding.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions from council? Councillor Carlson?
Thank you, Mayor Sperman. I just need a little bit of guidance, and forgive me if you've already clarified this. So under I'm sorry, I'm scrolling here. Under the MSP, I think it's called, the ones that the Economic Recovery Committee has recommended fully take up those dollars. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if we follow through with that, we take MSP out of the equation, and we're only looking at the resilience stream, correct?
No, you're actually looking at the resilience stream and the public transit stream. You have the right now, the funding resides in public transit, and if it's the will of council to move that funding in whole or in part to the resilience stream.
Okay, so we would be pulling, is it the 13.1 million?
Correct.
Okay, and that would all be pulled out of transit? And then out, sorry, go ahead.
You have the option of taking it all or a portion of that.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Well, if I could just add, this is not an ideal way to work through spending this money. It's become available very quickly. They provided general guidelines for us to consider, have not been prescriptive, but there was some guidance in the conversation. And Michael, can you speak to the conversation about transferring money from transit to the operational side? Just the comments that they shared.
The comments that were shared to me on telephone conversation is that they strongly encourage that monies be spent in a short period of time. The governments, both levels of governments, are trying desperately to put incentives and create work within the economy in short order.
And I guess the other consideration there would be that because funding exists now out to 2028 under the transportation stream, given the amount of money that's flowing out, will that money be there in 2028? Would just be another, similar to the points raised by Haley around future MSI funding.
There was no guarantee that I was told that the money would reside there, as per all the comments that the Treasurer has given forward.
Final question, if I may, Your Worship.
Go ahead.
I think it's my final question. I just need some guidance here. So if we do move the money to the resilience stream, is there anything that transit is, for lack of a better term, desperate for, that we would then having to put off until 2027 or 28 or whenever it is?
I mean, I think from a transit perspective, many of the projects that we did come up with, time was the biggest challenge for us in completing some of those in the allotted time frame. There are other opportunities like with electric bus. We do have federal gas tax that we can draw from with respect to that project. All the projects that we have are would take some time in the design and completion. The couple of opportunities that we did have were when it comes to the terminals were the NMAX and the ATB would be a smaller scale facility. The projects that we did also analyze took into consideration some of the operational costs. And so with the electric buses, there's it could be a possible cost reduction in terms of diesel fuel. I mean, to answer your question, all the projects are important, but if the funding is at the will of council to be moved, we would put those projects forward through the CIP.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we're looking at the sheet that outlines the three options. So we have option 1, and there's 13.1 million available to us. Option 1, which says city could spend 19.6 million, and potentially 13.28 million would come from the feds, and 6.3 would come from the city. And then option 2 says we would spend 16.5 million, with 13.1 million coming from the feds, or 13.2 million, and 3.2 or 3.3 million committed by the city. And option 3 says we'd spend 22.9 million, and 13.6 million could potentially come from the feds, and 9.3 million would come from the city. That's basically, we have to choose one of those three options.
I'll just add the information that we sent out on Friday actually had 5 options. That was on that sheet. And this morning I came up with the 6th option just to cause more chaos. But if you, Mayor, if you don't mind, would
Sure.
you allow me to run through
Can
them?
we put those up on the screen? Sure, yeah.
Do we have that in front of us? Sorry, it's Ryan here, because I've got all the way down to option 5. So option 6, has that been emailed to us at all or anything?
No.
Okay, so you're just going to go over it and I'll just kind of listen. Okay, very good.
So option 1 is a combination of the, so let me just start out. There's a total allocation of approximately $13.1 million available to the city. Under the COVID funding resilience stream, project can be no greater than $10 million. Option 1 is a combination of resilience stream and the transit stream. Option 1 would see broadband fiber at 6.2 million, Legacy Park Discovery Area at 1.2 million, NMAX parking lot at 6 million, and the electric bus project. The impact to the overall, combining the 80-20 split and the 40-60 split, the feds would be contributing 13.1, and we'll have to do some, these are all approximate numbers, and the city's contribution would be $16.28 million. Option 2 would be moving everything to the resilience stream, and that would be broadband fiber at 9.27, Legacy Park Discovery Area at 1.2, and the NMAX parking lot at 6 million. The province again would contribute 13.1 million, and the city would contribute 3.29 million. Option 3, this is a combination of the resilience stream and the transit stream. Broadband fiber at 9.45, Legacy Park at 1.2, transit terminals 5.7, and electric bus project at $6 million. Again, the federal contribution would total 13.1 with some rounding, and the city's contribution is 9.15 million. Option 4 would be Again, another combination with broadband fiber at 4.85, Legacy Ridge 1.2, the life cycle building repairs at 4.6, the transit terminals at 5.7, and the electric bus program at 6 million. Again, a federal contribution of 3.1, and the city's contribution is approximately 9.15. Option 5 is another combination of the resilience stream and the transit stream. It would have the broadband fiber at 7.7, Legacy Park at 1.2, life cycle repairs at 4.6, the electric bus project at 6 million. Total contribution of feds is 3.1, with the city's contribution at 6.3. And the sixth project that you don't have on your paper, on your information, is moving everything to resilience. Broadband fiber at just under $10 million, Legacy Park 1.2, and life cycle repairs for buildings of 5.2, 4 million. The federal contribution is 13.1, and the city's contribution would be approximately 3.29 million. As you can see, this is a bit of a smorgasbord of opportunities for council to take into consideration, and not that any one of them stands out better than the others, but there is definitely with each option a different financial impact back to the city.
Mr. Mayor, it's Joe. I have some questions.
Go ahead, Joe. Councilor Morrow.
Thank you. Just if I can just back it up to get a little bit of clarification. So the MSP of 12.06 million, we've discussed that, and we are kind of, we know where we're going to spend the money on that, have we not? Or is that possibly going to change?
We've been given direction to proceed with those MSP projects as indicated, unless council were to direct differently today. Those were directed.
Perfect. So the MSP is 12.06. This new funding of 13.120. I'm just calling it the infrastructure and pandemic response. Is that what this is all about?
I'll take a shot at that. There's another pot of funding that you'll see we just received that's COVID related. This is similar. It's ISIP federal funding, largely made up of transit funding, but some infrastructure funding that's been pushed to the left or brought forward to allow communities to deal with, really from an economic stimulus standpoint, to deal with pressing infrastructure and transport needs.
I guess where I'm trying to go with this. So the 12 million of the MSP and this 13 million, and now you're saying there's another third pot of money?
Yes.
Is that what I heard you?
Yes, Councilor, the Safe Start pot of money that Michael spoke to at the beginning as one of a number of grant funding opportunities. Our allocation was announced Friday. That's specifically for costs that municipalities incurred as a result of responding to COVID, like PPE and the like, and also lost revenue, both for general operations and transit. So that's a separate fund.
Sorry, I'm following on this presentation. So how much money is that?
That's in the neighborhood of around $11 million.
Okay, so we have, just to kind of recap, we have MSP of a little over 12 million, this 13.12 million, and then this Safe Start that you called it of about 11 million. Now, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and these three pots of money can only be spent for certain projects. You can't take the 12 and 13 and 11, add them up, and then we pick the best projects that we want that meet the community's needs?
Each of the three pots of money comes with specific criteria, so the challenge for council is to try and address those community needs within the criteria for each pot of funding. But they are different criteria, particularly the third.
Okay. So today, we are not talking about the 12 million, the MSP. That we've decided that, have we not?
Yes.
Okay, we're not talking about the 11 million, or are we? This
No,
safe
no,
start.
we're not. No, we're not.
Okay, so the pressure to us right now is the 13.12 million.
Correct.
Okay, and that when I'm looking at the 5, now 6 options that we were presented. So my question to all those options, why is fiber optics in every one of those options? Seems to me that the city is pushing fiber optics because it's in every one of the 6 projects, and it's the biggest expenditure of the 13 million. It's pretty much all of the 13 million. Can you tell me why that is in every one of the options?
It's simply to maximize the dollars that were available. It is the biggest.
So if we don't have this fiber optics in any of these options, you're telling me that we would not be anywhere near maximizing the 13 million.
That is correct. The other is to leave it in the transit stream and wholly use it for that, and hope that the monies are still available and through the timeline to 2028.
And if I can just add to that quickly, we are not pushing any broadband option. Broadband is an investment opportunity that's on the table that was presented to council. We were directed not to proceed with that because we didn't have identified funding for it, but to bring it forward in the upcoming CIP process. It is a project we've heard about a number of times from the business community, and it is a project that, and I forget the timeline, but was very close to meeting that definition of shovel-ready. So that's why we've included it. But if there's no intent on the part of council to move forward with that's council's, clearly council's decision.
Mr. Mayor, I'll hop out if there's others.
Okay, Councillor Higgins next in the queue. Councillor Higgins?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, thank you. A question I have, option 6. So we've got broadband fiber, similar questions that Councillor Morrow had. With this, the 10 million that we've got in there, if you said we could put that back into transit. Now, if I go back through the options, I couldn't see one, or maybe refresh me if there is one there that has the broadband fiber and transit legacy park and life cycle, and how it's broken down a little more for broadband fiber. If partial went there and partial went back to transit, did we have one through those options? I'm just trying to find an option that has that, because you'd thought that maybe if you didn't do broadband fiber, you could all go back into transit, but is there a hybrid on that?
There's definitely, I did not document that, but that is an opportunity.
Okay, that's just my main question.
And I do think option 3 identifies that, if I understand what you're saying, Councillor.
Let's see here. Thanks for putting that up. Fiber. Okay, I'll have a look at that. I'll hop out if there's other questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Morrow, did you have more questions?
Yeah, I do actually. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. When I'm looking at the different presentations, I'm looking at attachment 2, the ICIP potential projects. What is that? Like, what is this? Like, there's so many different attachments and so many different acronyms for all this pot of money, and now I see this ICIP. Like, what? Can somebody tell me and explain what this is and these numbers and just elaborate a little bit more on this? Attachment number 2.
Do we know what document Councillor Morrow is referring to?
It's in my agenda.
Yes, we're just trying to make sure we know what document you're referring to. Was there a page number on it?
Well, it's on mine. It's attachment number 2, ICIP potential projects.
That the one that has on the left-hand
Yeah.
column, the green,
Green.
the blue, and the red?
Green, yeah, green, blue, and the red. So tell me, is this part of any of these? Is this part of any of this 13 million?
Yes, it is. So I'll just take you through the spreadsheet again. The green items are those ones that are already attributed to the MSP money. The
Okay,
item,
but see, this is where I get, sorry to interrupt. This is where I get a little confused. MSP money, as far as I'm concerned, we've kind of decided it. We know what we're doing. We know where we're spending. If our only focus today is on this 13 million, I prefer to talk about the 13 million and nothing else. I don't want to know about any other money, any other pots of money, unless we can merge this money and use it, how we see fit. But I think we've been told, or at least I understood, that each pot of money is designed for specific criteria, certain things that qualify for that pot of money. So right now, it's the guns to our head for the 13 million. All I want to focus on is how we're going to spend the 13 million. So can you just talk to me about that, please?
the 13 million is the items that are highlighted in blue, which are consideration to transfer money from the transit stream to the resilience stream, and can be any combination of those items. The next, so again, that's broadband, Legacy Park Discovery, NMAX parking lot phase 1, and any of the life cycle building repairs or upgrades. The next sheet, and if you would, Ryan, is the transit stream. Again, council can utilize the full $13 million in the transit stream and utilize it until 2028. But what we heard were no guarantees, or no one would verify that the money would be there till 2028. However, we could obligate administration, if council wanted to, is to do a bus, electric bus pilot project for $6 million, and obligate to finish the small transit hubs and short order as well over probably a 2-year period.
If I may, just so I understand, so that we're on the same page, what do you mean when you classify certain projects under resilience?
Resilience is the COVID-19 Community Resilience Program, where the federal government will allow you to transfer, in whole or in part, the $13 million to resilience, and resilience can include retrofits, repairs, upgrades to municipal buildings, COVID response measures for social distancing, active transportation infrastructure that includes parks, trails, footbridges, bike lanes, multi-use pathways, disaster mitigation adaptation projects, including natural infrastructure, flood and fire mitigation, and tree planting and related infrastructure.
Okay, just a few more, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So if I'm looking at the blue, color-coded blue, they're all titled resilience. So the way I understand it is that we can do any of those projects and utilize the $13 million, correct?
Correct.
If I add up the first part of the blue, it looks like it's 20 million. And then I go down to the next part of the blue, that's 4 million. So 4.6 and 20.4. So what's that? That's 25, 26 million dollars, correct?
Correct.
If we take away the broadband out of that, that would leave us 15, 16 million dollars for all the rest of the resilient projects, correct?
Correct.
Why don't we just do those? Unless I'm not understanding anything, to me, if these are things that we need, you know, Labor Club ice plant replacement, Nicholas Sharon pad replacement, the cooling tower replacement at City Hall, all these things are things that we need. And if they qualify for the 13 million, if we take out the broadband, that's take out 10 million out of the 26, we're at 16, we kick in the rest. And look at all the projects that we would complete. So that, unless I'm misunderstanding this, that's kind of the direction or what I'm thinking. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Any further comments? Councillor Morrow is suggesting we remove the broadband and then fund more projects. Councillor Carlson?
Thanks, Mayor Spriven. And sorry, I had my hand up and then it went down somehow. Mr. Kelly, can you show option 6 again? When I saw it, it was kind of what I was chicken scratching this morning on my own, and I kind of wanted to look at that, what you've put forward. And the life cycle building repairs, your number is slightly different than I had. I had 4.6 in my version. What would be added to those life cycle building repairs to add the extra 600,000? Am I missing that somewhere?
In anticipation of some potential changes in adding the life cycle, we always have opportunities to add for life cycle. So the 3 opportunities would be the Nicholas Sharon pool roof replacement.
Okay.
The fire hall number 2 roof replacement, and the Lethbridge Soccer Center lower roof replacement.
And those could be completed in the timeline allowed?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Before I weigh in on my preference, this 13.1 that we're discussing, 13.2, I'll call it because it round up. If we did nothing, because we have to have this in, I guess, by the end of today, or a decision made by the end of today. If we did nothing, would we still have this 13.2 million, but it would just be in the transit stream? Is that what I'm hearing?
That is correct.
So doing nothing wouldn't impact us. It just wouldn't allow us to move stuff around right now.
And the whole aim of this program and this initiative is to move money forward to contribute to economic stimulus. So you're absolutely right, Councillor. We could stand pat and do nothing. This program was designed to give municipalities an opportunity to, again, along with the other streams, to create some economic stimulus and get things moving now.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I'm going to weigh in. Councillor Morrow made his preference clear. I'll weigh in a bit, so it won't be in the form of a question. Option 6, because it was similar to something I was working on earlier, seems like the one I would move forward with. My concern is that then we have completely drained our transit funding for the next several years. And so that is a concern for me. However, if it's the will of council to get things moving forward, do some stimulus spending, get people back to work, get some things done while we have the flexibility, I'm going to say that my preference, it is the lowest city investment. It takes great advantage of the Fed's 80%, is to move forward with option 6. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Miyashiro.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor. There's a question I have with the broadband fiber is that if we move ahead with that, does anyone know how long it'll take to build out the network?
So, Councillor Miyashiro, it's Doug Hawkins. The intention here is you'll recall in July, we presented a pilot which involved a backbone network in all of our industrial parks, sharing to the north all the way down to Anderson in the south. And that investment in total is somewhere, based on current estimates, between $12 and $15 million. So the intention, though, is that whatever we do here in the short term can be accomplished by the end of December next year.
Okay, so once that happens, what kind of revenues can we generate from city-owned backbone, fiber broadband backbone?
Again, we have a pro forma. We presented it actually in camera back in June, or early June, and then made a public presentation with respect to the payback period. The investment, any capital investment that can be funded from other sources, in this case grant funding, improves that pro forma, improves the overall payback period, and shortens the period by which the infrastructure becomes profitable. Again, the model here is to expand on the existing dark fiber utility that already exists for municipal purposes, and to become a leaser of dark fiber to ISPs, to internet service providers, in a critically underserved area in the industrial park. So
it'll add to our net revenues versus just putting it into other things. Might just be an expenditure that we don't see the payback as we would from the fiber backbone. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
I would support option 6.
Hey, I have a related question. Last week there was an announcement that TELUS, I believe it was, is going to provide 5G service to 6 communities in Alberta before the end of the year, and they already have provided to another 6. What's the benefit, and how would that integrate with the fiber options that are proposed here?
So for Council's benefit, 5G stands for 5th generation wireless service. So the intention from the major telecommunication companies is to ultimately replace what's currently called LTE or 3G wireless mobile services with 5G. 5G is intended to be faster and more responsive in terms of data transfer, again, over wireless networks. It's a radio network. It differs from fiber insofar as that it is limited in terms of its ultimate capacity to transfer data at high speeds. Fiber is a complementary service to that, and vice versa. 5G towers, small cell infrastructure still rely on a fiber network, a fiber backbone, in order to get to at least the last mile. Even 5G technology has a smaller range depending on the infrastructure they have as compared to fiber optic cables. So it's a good news in terms of the major telecoms making investment in 5G for mobile users, but it at best is complementary to any fiber investment. Fiber investment is still, as I say, the backbone, and what we are intending by the project in our industrial park is to just expand on a missing backbone in our community that limits internet access, broadband access to the business sector.
Okay, thank you. And you've identified that the overall plan would cost $12 to $15 million to serve our industrial parks. And the more we spend from grant funding, the better the payback is and the lower the risk for the city of Lethbridge. Is that correct? So that's the difference between spending $9 million or $5 million on broadband or spending 0.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Thank you for all the information. I appreciate option 6 coming forward because I was looking at what was being presented and didn't see this type of thing. So thank you very much, Michael, for doing this. I'm actually in support of the conversation around life cycle, the building repairs. There are a number of things that are on that list. And again, if members of council refer to the capital budget, there are a lot of life cycle projects. There's a lot of critical infrastructure that needs some upgrading and updating in order to either make it last longer or to replace it. And I think this is an opportunity to be focusing on that. Definitely in support of the treasurer when she identifies that there are federal gas tax projects that are funded through federal gas tax. We need to be looking at those as well if we can create opening for use of that for future projects. I think that's essential as well into considering this. My concern though is around transit, and yeah, hey, we may or may not get a payback, and if you talk to a lot of the businesses out in the industrial park, a lot of them are using wireless technology as is. We end up creating utility, we end up competing with private sector again. And at this time, with this money and this consideration of what's going on in the world, I actually don't support moving in that direction. What option 6 does is it actually becomes quite creative because we can flush the transit money and we can spread it around the organization, we can spread it around the community, because if we're focusing on actual life cycle needs, we're actually connecting in with different trades in our community. We're dealing with a lot of different businesses, a lot of individuals. We're circulating that money, which is much better in my mind than putting it all into one very specific technology. The other advantage of that is we can actually flow some of the money from broadband, which I would eliminate from there, and take that same amount of $10 million, reallocate it to life cycle need projects, federal gas tax projects, and put it back into transit, predominantly the hard infrastructure that we require to make a better system. Members of council need to recall that a couple weeks ago, we approved the change in the operation in order to create a better system. But we still have issues with wayfinding. We still have issues with hard infrastructure at stops. We still have the ability to create some opportunities, a better experience, on-bus Wi-Fi, things of that nature that actually will encourage people to get out of their cars and into transit. So we have some of those opportunities through the resiliency fund to actually funnel that money back into transit. Then if the pot is available for us still by 2027, 2028, we've got some other things that we can do. But the Transit Master Plan, again, is identifying an awful lot of projects that could be resolved. Scott presented some things here, Mr. Greco, presented some things here as well, that the need is there. And us changing the operation system to make it quote unquote better is really pointless if we don't have the supporting infrastructure. So I love option 6. I think it's the creative and innovative solution, but I think we need to be just re-examining it. It's our job to trust administration, absolutely. And it's not my place to say specifically where money would go, but I would much rather see the potential $16.439 million worth of projects focused on life cycle needs, alleviating gas tax funded projects and putting it back into transit than what is being proposed there.
So you like option 6 if as long as we delete the $10 million for fiber and use it for something else?
I would prefer under the current conditions to actually put that back in the community in different ways in terms of increasing and improving the experience for transit users, to actually put the money back into some of these life cycle projects that I've seen in at least 2, if not 3 CIPs, and to create the space in federal gas tax projects.
So,
Mr. Mayor, it's Joe again.
Yeah, option 7. Okay, I'm just trying to get clarification. Thanks. I do have Councillor Campbell, then I can go to Councillor Morrow, unless it's specifically related.
No, keep going. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Campbell?
Well, thanks. I just for my understanding, there's different numbers here on options, like with broadband. I just wondered, where do you come up with those numbers? What's the significance of going from a 6.4 million to whatever the other options are? Where do you come up with those numbers?
Simply the amount of length of line that we'd install. So you could install 100 meters or 10,000 meters. There's a lot of flexibility in that project.
Okay.
Councillor Morrow?
Okay, thank you.
Was Councillor Campbell finished?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Carlson, in some of his questions, triggered some questions in my mind. I guess I was not aware, or I didn't know, or I didn't pick up on it, so I'm sorry. If we do nothing, just to be clear, because I think I heard the answer to Councillor Carlson, if we do nothing, we still get the 13 million. I was under the impression that we needed to decide or we lost it. But we don't lose it. We still get that no matter what. Is that correct?
So jump in here if I'm wrong again, please, but my understanding of this program was taking what was transit money, transit grant money under ISIP, and bringing it forward and making it available for things other than transit if municipalities wanted to spend it that way. So my understanding is that funding that funding would still be in that grant stream, but again, the aim of this program and bringing it forward was to give municipalities access to this funding earlier, to be less restrictive in what they could spend it for, so that in this current COVID environment, it could be used to address current needs and stimulate the economy. Is that?
Thanks for that clarification.
Is that correct,
Yeah,
though? I just want to double check with folks
That's
here.
correct.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, so also when Councillor Carlson was asking questions, if we do nothing, then we still get the 13 million and we continue on with the funds wherever they were allocated. Is that one of these options?
The only thing to add there would be, again, as the treasurer mentioned when she was speaking about the future of MSI funding, given the environment we're in now, that might be an option, but it's difficult to say. And what was indicated to us, at least administration to administration, was that in this current environment where there's a pressure to get money out there and spent in the economy, that it's difficult to predict if this funding, or if our current pot of funding was forecasted to exist out till 2028. There's nothing to guarantee it will be there.
Okay, sorry. Again, if I heard the questions and answers from Councillor Carlson, if we do nothing, this 13 million is still allocated for transit projects. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is it all 13 million going to transit, or do we have that somewhere here as an option? Do nothing, a do nothing option.
It wasn't identified in your package, but that always was an option for you to consider.
Okay, so can you tell me then, let's call it option 7, if we do nothing, where does the $13 million go?
It'd be a combination of the micro transit hubs that was identified earlier, and potentially an electric bus project, replacement of a floor.
Is that that's in the attachment 3 then, the transit projects all in green?
That's correct.
Okay. So if we do nothing, attachment number 3, transit projects all in green, would be where this $13 million went.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's also
thanks for that.
it's also just important to remember for that funding too that we'd have a 60% matching requirement for that funding.
So we would have to kick in how many? What of the 13 million? We'd have to kick in how much?
13 million is the
Total
federal contribution, and then we'd have to match it with another 60% on top of that.
So another 7 million, say 7 whatever. Oh wow.
What is that, Haley? That's more than that.
No, sorry. Let me, if I can ask a question. I thought that 13 million represented their 40% contribution. We would be making a 60% contribution, which would be more than 13 million, to be in the 15, 16
That's correct.
space. Okay.
Wow. The more we talk, or at least the more I'm listening, the more I'm getting overwhelmed and confused. I don't know about my colleagues, but wow.
And we recognize that, and we're trying to bring this forward, given these tight timelines in the best way possible. But these are challenging decisions to make.
Okay, so if we do nothing, if I may, Mr. Mayor, thank you for the allowing me to. So if we do nothing, what I'm hearing you guys say is that we'd have to kick in 15 or 16 million to spend the Fed's 13 million to complete the transit projects in attachment 3. So we're looking at nearly $30 million, of which 16 of it is ours.
That's correct.
Okay, well then I definitely don't want to do that. You know what? The more I think about it, then and as confused as I am, and with all the options, I think I kind of like what Councillor Kaufman was saying, and I might tend to agree and go in that way. Option 6, but take the 10 million for the broadband and put it back into more important things like life cycle, as Councillor Kaufman talked about. And also because a lot of those life cycle projects have been in our CIP, so kind of makes sense right now. But who knows? I might change my mind if another member of council pops with a few other questions and confuses the hell out of me even more. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I'll do my best not to be more confusing. With option 6, and I'm sorry, I wish I had it in front of me because I've been doing my own chicken scratch here. First, maybe through you, Your Worship, to one of the presenters, what is the top transit priority? The only one I keep seeing pop up is the electric bus. Is that the top priority?
So the number one priority for transit is our terminal hubs. We have a lot of planning to do before we implement or begin those projects. And so with council's direction on September 8th to move forward with changes to our system, those plans have already begun. So that would be our number one project. The second most important project that transit had would be to implement electric bus technology.
Okay, so the terminals are the top, but they won't meet the timelines under this. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. Some of the only timeline that we could meet with respect to the terminals would be the NMAX Center and a smaller scale terminal at the ATB.
Well, I just want to clarify that if you leave the money in the transit stream, the timeline is 2028.
Right, so there's no rush if we just leave it.
There's no rush except for the feds and the provinces push to move money out into the economy.
All righty, so if we did push forward at least the electric bus, because that seems to be at least a higher priority that could meet these timelines, if we added that into option 6, we'd have to reduce broadband by, I'm guessing, 2.4, is that correct? And add 3.6 of city funding. Is that correct? If we did that?
Approximately. I'd need to have a timeout to work through the math and the spreadsheet.
Well, Councillor Carson, are you saying add the 6.2 million electric bus pilot in there?
Yes. And then that would necessitate us removing 2.4 some from broadband and adding 3.6 from the city to the city's funding, if I'm correct in my quick math.
Yeah, the electric bus is 6 million, so we'd have to, I would think we'd have to remove 6 million from that broadband fiber line if you wanted to keep it, and then add the 40%, or sorry, the 60% city funding requirement, because that transit is 40/60.
Right, so that my numbers show that then we'd only have to remove 2.4 from the broadband, and then add our 3.6 into the city's 20. I might be wrong.
Beyond my math skills, yeah.
But if we did what Councillor Kaufman suggested, we could just move forward with Legacy Park and the life cycle building repairs, remove broadband completely, and still have the 10 million set aside for the terminal enhancements or upgrades or installations, or the electric bus, should we choose to move forward.
If I could ask a question, because what I'm hearing there, we could, because my understanding is we don't have to get to the province with how we're going to, or we could go back and say that we're going to leave X amount in the transit stream, and we'll deal with that in a timely manner as we would have otherwise. But we would like to transfer the amount, in this case, using option 6 as an example, we would like to transfer the 5.2 million for legacy building repairs, or life cycle building repairs, and the 1.2 for Legacy Park. So we could go forward with that kind of an option if we wanted?
That's correct.
Okay. The other thing I'd just like to ask and just make sure is that that those life cycle building repairs can all be completed in that timeline, because they would have to be, correct?
That's correct.
And my final question then, because I've seen the life cycle building repairs, and I think it was the swimming pool roof and another roof, I can't remember. Anyways, I've seen that jump by 600,000. Are there any other life cycle building repairs? Because I'm sorry I don't have my CIP open in front of me, I should, that could be accelerated and still be completed in that? Is there any other of those that we could access?
What has been identified on your spreadsheet and the 3 that I listed out to you were projects that the facility services feel that they can comfortably get done in the 1-year period.
Okay, so you've identified every single project of life cycle building repairs that could be done.
That could be done.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Croson.
Thank you. Fascinating conversation, and thank you for everyone for all the work that's gone into putting all of this together. I'm leaning a little more to option 6, especially with some of the changes that are suggested. What I like about option 6 with Legacy Park as well as life cycle changes is it has something in the community as well as something that will help the community pay less if we can do it right, with life cycle building costs coming. I would like to see more maintenance. I know I've said right from the beginning with recovery that the more maintenance work we can do during a recovery seems to be the smartest way to do rather than building new things. It seems to just be the way to get through a recession and a recovery the best. So I'm leaning way more towards the option 6, the revised option 6.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Mayor, I have a question.
Okay, question, go ahead, Councillor Morrow.
Kaufman was ahead of me. Go ahead with Councillor Kaufman.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman, would you like to speak at this time?
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I think Mr. Kelly has answered my question that all of the life cycle projects were reviewed, and we only landed on 3 for $5 million-ish. Am I correct to understand that?
Correct.
Thank you. To the city manager or designate?
Jeffrey, I need clarity on it, because I thought there was 3 more, but there was still Labor Club, Nicholas Sharon, City Hall, Fritzick, Library North Wing. So I'm actually counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and plus the ones Mr. Kelly added.
Oh, that's why I asked the question.
Yeah, sorry.
We heard Mr.
Sorry,
Only 3.
I'll correct myself. That is correct. There's the 8 in total.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you, Councillor Carlson, for that. I appreciate that. To the city manager designate, there's only one project on here with federal gas tax fund. Is that all we have currently circulating through our CIP that's available to us to free up?
Councillor Kaufman, we gave an update to one of the stipulations for the grant is that the contract can't be awarded, and I might not use the wrong terminology, or the project can't be started. And so when we went, we looked through the entire CIP, but most of our CIP projects have been started or the contract has been awarded. So there's not very many in terms of flexibility, in terms of switching out federal gas tax at this point, just given where all the projects are at.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that clarification. Final question, the city manager designate. If we were to look at option 6 and address some of the, and again, keep going back to the transit master plan, some of the simple, some of the basics, some of the stuff that can be done. We can address priorities, and we may not have the funds immediately available or the timing available to do them, which I think if the community wants to be participating, I think people make it work, but that's a second point. There are a lot of things, I keep going back to wayfinding and hard infrastructure that need to be improved, upgraded, changed, whatever the case may be. I keep focusing on that part of the transit master plan that does actually address some very simple things to improve rider experience if we're trying to upgrade the system. Are you saying that there's nothing else in there that can be done, small projects put together?
Councillor Kaufman, thank you for your question. We do have wayfind signs on the project list. Again, I'll refer to that project because transit takes so much planning involved, and when we do switch the routes for some of these facilities and wayfinding, we do have the project on the list. Again, it's a challenge in meeting that 2021 timeline. Although we do intend on making these upgrades to our system, so they are slated projects. But depending on the will of council and which direction they go, those will be integrated into our plan. So either via the CIP process or depending on the outcome of today's decision.
Thank you. I guess, and again, perhaps like others, I need to stay out of operations, but at the same time, just getting my mind around how we could not upgrade our signage in the city within 15 months. But you know better. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I think if I could, though, one of the challenges when you get presented with an opportunity like this is working to whatever infrastructure update or program plan you have in place. And so Transit's been working quite hard to try and chart that path forward, deal with the KPMG recommendations, try and understand which parts of the transit master plan, which was, to my understanding, never approved. It makes it very difficult to be agile and make quick decisions. And I think what needs to happen here is we need to have a clearly developed transit way forward with clear guidance from council, and then we'd be in a better position to respond to these sort of 72-hour, 96-hour decision-making windows.
Yeah, my concern is the possibility of dropping the fiber optic. We invested in a process called Intelligent Communities. We spent 2 years on that. We've had response from the community that we should be investing in broadband to support growth. And I think dropping all the funding certainly would be a challenge. We've heard that the payback on the system improves if we spend more money. I think to spend nothing limits our ability to attract investment in the future. So that's the struggle that I have with it. In terms of supporting economic development coming forward, I think not spending any money on broadband expansion could be a problem for us.
Mr. Mayor, I have
Yep.
questions. It's Joe.
Go ahead.
I'm just going back to Mr. City Manager. I thought I heard you say that the 13 million, or maybe you didn't say it, maybe I interpreted it incorrectly. The 13 million would be 40%, and we would have to kick in 60%. Did I understand that correctly?
Yes, so if for transit, if we were to spend this money on transit projects, yes, it's a 40% federal, 60% municipal. For the resiliency stream that Michael spoke about earlier, it's 80% federal, 20% municipal.
Okay, so when I'm looking at the options, attachment 5, funding allocations, where it shows the 5 options, I see where, yeah, the feds, some of it is 80% and some of it's 40. So all of transit, the projects that were presented today, we would have to contribute 60%.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't know if either I missed this or didn't catch it. Where are we? Whatever. So let me back up with one other question. So, what is the minimum amount? I guess it would be 20%. Would be our minimum contribution if we were to choose the projects that the feds would contribute 80%. So our minimum would be 30 or 20% of the 13 million. Am I right in calculating that?
That's correct. There's 2 ways to spend that 13 million. One under a 40 fed, 60 municipal, and the other is under a 20 fed, an 80 fed, 20 municipal.
Right. So if I'm looking at trying to spend the least amount of our dollars, I would be looking at where we contribute 20%, so of the 13 million. Okay. And where would that? So anything over and above that, like we can go from 20% and I guess all the way up to 60%. Where would we get this money from? Was that answered with to a question that was answered or asked by Deputy Mayor Kaufman regarding the gas tax? Is that where this money would come from? Our portion?
Councillor Morrow, I just want to clarify. So the $13.12 million would be under resilience stream, would be the Fed's 80% contribution. So in order to match that with 20%, we would need to contribute roughly $3.3 million for a total of 16.5 approximately. So
yeah, okay.
Okay. So so under the ICIP program, you could match with MSI. So when I mentioned earlier that if we receive the 2021 MSI and federal gas tax, then we would be able to contribute within the existing CIP funding. However, if we don't receive the 2021 funding, we will be short roughly $4 million with the other projects that have been approved recently. And we would need to either draw on a reserve or potentially make some, City Council would have to kind of consider projects potentially that would be canceled or other options. So at this point, if we don't receive MSI in 2021, we would need to find another $4 million.
Okay, so just to be clear, to make sure I understand that. So our contribution of 20% only, or would it be even higher? Would come from MSI and the gas tax?
So at this point in time, there's a few funding sources. If we look at all of the funding available up to the end of 2021, because that's our current CIP. So there's some other city funding available. Keeping in mind that we still need to confirm if the exhibition project will be approved under MSI. So there's lots of moving parts. I realize this is very complicated, but at this point in time, ICIP can only be matched with MSI or a city funding source.
Which, if I thought I heard you say, would be, if we get it, $4 million.
If we don't receive MSI in 2021, we will have to find an alternative funding source of $4 million.
Okay, if we don't.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay,
Thanks for now.
thank you. I think I'd like, my preference is a modified option 5. And that would be the first three items that are listed there, but instead of the bus pilot project, the transit terminals. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. You've just triggered another question. So in your modified option 5, we wouldn't even have to put transit terminals and electric bus pilot forward, would we? Because we still have access to that if we just leave those dollars in place?
That's correct.
Okay, so we would just leave those. Excellent. Question around the broadband fiber, because I think the modified 6 that perhaps, and I may be speaking out of turn, Councillor Croson, I think you spoke to the modified 6, which I took to mean Councillor Kaufman, and again, forgive me, Deputy Mayor Kaufman, if I'm speaking out of turn, was to remove broadband completely and just do the rest of the option 6. Question through you, Your Worship, to the city manager or designate. What's the smallest investment we could make in broadband that would see an impact in our community? Because as Councillor Campbell said, I'm seeing figures all over the place. What's the smallest investment we could make that would answer the mayor's concerns, hopefully, about enticing business and making it more appealing to them? Have we looked at the smallest investment we could make?
Yeah, the smallest, easiest investment is in the sharing business park, and it's roughly $2 million.
So if we moved forward with another modified 6 and said $2 million in the broadband, that would still leave $8 million to accomplish some of the transit goals, such as the electric bus pilot and some of the terminals. Is that correct?
Correct.
Then I'd be in support of moving that direction, because I don't want, as I said earlier, I don't want to completely denude the transit funding. There are things that are necessary for that system, but I do also want to move forward with some of these possibilities. So I would do a modified option 6, leave the $2 million for the sharing industrial fiber in there, and keep the $8 million in the transit funding stream as it's already in. That would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you. Acting Mayor Parker.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. So my question for you is, our deadline is the 30th. Am I correct on that?
Correct.
And right now we're kind of having, it's kind of like we're trying to dice this thing up a few times. Have other municipalities having the same situation in regards to time guidelines? Are they asking for any kind of extension for 2 weeks just to do their due diligence a little more, even though that this did come over the wall, kind of? Is any other municipality asking for any extension? Or if not, are we allowed to ask for an extension for time?
Others have, and we did. The extension went from September 21st to September 30th.
Wow.
Nobody's asked for anything beyond September 30th, to my knowledge, but many municipalities asked for an extension from the original date. As you know, the letter arrived in the mail, not electronically, so we basically had 2 days to respond, and we got an extension to September 30th.
Okay, so
I think it is.
can I just
difficult to make a decision right now, and a number of options have been put on the table. What we might want to do is recess this meeting and allow our administration to reformulate the options and then have a discussion again after CIC.
Is it fair to also, Chris, to Mr. Mayor, to just ask for an extension? Like, if you don't ask, you don't get. And I'd be more than happy to ask. Well, I think we should ask for a 2-week extension. Just we want to make sure we're doing this properly, and hopefully other orders of government would respect that. And I think we should ask for it.
Okay, I can maybe check with some other mayors, the mid-sized city mayors. I think they were all pretty much committed to doing this by September 30th.
But also, the province is probably going to look at this collectively. They may look at one-offs too. Like, hey, you know what? If that's what you guys need, you know what? You know, I'm just saying. I don't really care. Even though if other cities don't ask, I don't think it hurts us for not asking again. So that's all I'm saying.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Kaufman.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. I know that you are looking for a recess here. I think maybe part of the challenge we're facing is that we're trying to dive into specifics. When, again, I just point out that our job is to sort of provide the value statement or the value direction. I think we're all agreeing on life cycle being maximized as best it can. I think, again, any opportunity for the treasurer to move gas tax funded projects. She's only identified the one because everything else is underway. Where we're running into the challenge, I think, is between putting money back into transit or putting money into broadband. And I think if we can provide the city manager with those broad strokes, that may help. And I don't know if we need to be asking for an extension. I believe we can do this today if we just sort of create that value overview. As opposed to being specific, 2.2 into broadband and the rest. I think the city manager understands where we're starting to come from, and we should be able to resolve it through value statements as opposed to specific negotiation.
Okay. Councillor Hagan.
Thanks, Mayor. I'm kind of along the line, honestly, with Ryan. You don't ask, you won't get, and I don't know if that's just something, worst case scenario, we're told no and we continue forward, but I tell you, we're dealing with anywhere $10, $20 million here, and we're trying down the seat of our pants, throw stuff around without really, I know admin has done research, and thank you very much for that, and some of these options that are coming forward, but we're already seeing ourselves look at all these options, twisting these options, and really haven't come to a conclusion, I think, collectively. And so I think sending that question out, the concern is if they say no, then we're stuck with this Wednesday deadline still. But I'm, to be very honest, I'm a little more confused than when I came in. I thought I kind of had what an option would be good and with a few changes, but then listening to the questions and stuff and debate from my colleagues, it's different yet. So I don't know. I'd like to get that request in there just to see if it's denied, and I don't know if we can do that now, and hopefully while we're still in council we could have a reply to it. Good luck, but it's worth a try.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Miyashiro.
Thanks, Chris. I actually agree with Jeff Kaufman about this, is that we can't be micromanaging the dollars. I like the way that things are laid out now. We have a broad understanding of what we want. I'm not sure what more time would be, what a benefit more time would be. We have a really good plan laid out, lots of options, and we just need to do it and move along. I don't see a point for us to say put some here, put some there. Obviously, the administration's given this a lot more thought than we have. With all the background information they have and their knowledge of putting this together, I think we should just make a decision and move ahead.
Thank you. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Mayor Spearman. Just to play devil's advocate, do we not have to make a decision? Like just saying, administration, you've heard our discussion, you figure it out. I think the opposite. I think we need to make a decision. Unless city manager, you're fine just saying, well, I'll do what I feel best, hearing what council said.
Yeah. My sense of it is we're elected to govern, and that means provide administration with direction.
Right, not just,
Yeah.
we like this, go do some of it. So I think
So-
my gut feeling is we need to make a decision, a council resolution that is on the books. Maybe I'm wrong.
So the city manager has offered to prepare a draft and present it to council after CIC. It's up to council if they would like to hear that or begin asking for extensions. Yep, Mr. Dalton?
Thanks, Your Worship. We would be happy to do that based on, as has been described, the direction that we've heard from council, and come back and see if that is on the mark, if council wants us to do that.
Okay, so the city manager is prepared to bring something back after the CIC. Is council interested in looking at that?
Your worship,
Yes.
yes, but then we have to make a decision, correct?
That's my understanding, but, yeah. Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, I would like to see that recommendation after the CIC. That's my thought.
Okay, two councillors asking to see a draft after CIC. Deputy Mayor Kaufman?
Yes, I would agree. A draft after CIC would be wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, three in favor of a draft after CIC.
Sure, I'm good with that.
Four,
Seems like a good idea.
five, that's a majority. So we'll see what the draft looks like and then go from there. If you'd like to take a break until the CIC meeting at 1:30, you would have almost a half-hour break. Okay, we could recess this meeting until after CIC. All agreed?
Yep.
Okay,
Agreed.
Motion to recess.
thank you.